Resistance is a time-honored biblical tradition. The heroes of the Bible stood up to the powers and principalities of this world and declared that God was in charge. In the book of Acts, Peter and the apostles explicitly say we must obey God rather than human authority. We can do the same in our time and place, learning from the ancient scriptures how to proclaim truth in an age of lies. Today, we reflect on ways to speak up, to tell the truth, and why it matters. When the world around us is full of propaganda, we must educate ourselves and those around us. Let us practice love and resistance during this time of worship together.
Our first lesson this morning is from the book of Daniel, and when I first read it, I thought, well, this is so appropriate. But this story is about three friends, three Hebrew friends, and it teaches us the value of accountable friendships and the strength that comes from standing together in faith. This is resistance. There is a word I'm going to read in my reading. There's a list of instruments. One of the instruments is a trigon. Didn't know what a trigon was, so I looked it up. And it's a small, three-cornered, four-stringed instrument. So I guess kind of like a ukulele almost, but it's... Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods and you do not worship the golden statue that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyra, trigon, harp, drum, and the entire musical ensemble, you should fall down and worship the statue that I have made. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to present a defense to you in this matter. If our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire and out of your hand, O king, let him deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods and we will not worship the golden statue that you have set up." Our second lesson this morning is from the book of Matthew. And, the Bible is just full of stories. You should read it. It's a novel. And this one is a biblical soap opera involving John the Baptist. At the time, Herod the ruler heard reports about Jesus, and he said to his servants, "This John the Baptist, he has been raised from the dead, and for this reason these powers are at work in him." For Herod had arrested John, bound him, put him in prison on account of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because John had been telling him, "It is not lawful for you to have her." Though Herod wanted to put him to death, he feared the crowd, because they regarded him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before the company, and she pleased Herod so much that he promised an oath to grant her whatever she might ask. Well, prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me the head of John the Baptist here on a platter." Well, the king was grieved. Yet out of regard for his oaths and for the guests, he commanded it to be given. And he sent and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, who brought it to her mother. His disciples came and took the body and buried him, and then they went to tell Jesus.
I do not feel rage all that often. And when I do, I'm usually able to get it to dissipate fairly quickly. Not so on Thursday. It was midday on Thursday when I saw a video of Senator Alex Padilla being roughly ejected from the press conference by FBI agents. My physical reaction was immediate. I felt a big push of adrenaline in my system. My heart started pounding. My breath shifted. I suspect my face turned red. I was enraged. I stepped away from the computer for almost an hour. I spent time calming down, getting some lunch, clearing my head. When I returned to work, this meant returning to the computer, I purposely did not turn on any social media because I knew that I would start digging again to get more information about what happened, and it would trigger me and I would be enraged again. But the incident sat there in the back of my head all day, and that night when I went home, sure enough, I started hunting for more information, and the rage welled up again. Thursday night, historian Dr. Heather Cox Richardson managed to write a level-headed summary of what happened. I didn't read it until Friday afternoon. I'm going to read part of her summary because I think it's important to say accurately and truthfully what happened. At a press conference for Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem in Los Angeles today, Noem's security assaulted Senator Alex Padilla, dragged him into the hallway, forced him onto the floor, and cuffed him as he tried to ask the secretary a question. Senator Padilla is the highest-ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration, Citizenship, and Border Safety. That subcommittee has oversight of federal agencies with citizenship, asylum, refugee, and immigration enforcement responsibilities. Department of Homeland Security. After the attack, Senator Padilla explained, "I'm here in Los Angeles today, and I was here in the federal building in the conference room awaiting a scheduled briefing from federal officials as part of my responsibility as a senator to provide oversight and accountability. While I was waiting for the briefing, I learned that Secretary Noem was having a press conference a couple of doors down the hall. And so I came to the press conference to hear what she had to say and to see if I could learn any additional information. At one point, I had a question, and so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country." Dr. Richardson continues, "A video of the encounter records him, Senator Padilla, clearly saying, 'I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have a question for the secretary.' Senator or not, he did not behave in a way that suggested a threat to the secretary. The Department of Homeland Security said Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live news conference, unquote, and claimed that Senator Padilla, quote, lunged, unquote, toward the secretary. Senator Patty Murray answered, quote, 'This is a lie. We all saw the video. The senator clearly identified himself, and he did not lunge toward anyone. She added, if these miserable propagandists will lie to you about roughing up a U.S. senator in a room full of reporters, what won't they lie to you about? I am struck by the importance of truth-telling, of naming the lie, of pushing against the propaganda as an act of resistance. It is important for the cause of truth. It is important to remind people that they are not alone in feeling like the truth has gotten so terribly warped, and it's an act that is biblical. Our scriptures offer up many examples, including two stories we heard today. From the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar asked Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true that you do not serve my gods and you do not worship the golden statue that I have set up? Nebuchadnezzar makes it sound like it's perfectly reasonable to request foreigners to worship his gods. It can't possibly be true that someone wouldn't agree to carry out his wishes. And he couldn't be more wrong. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are not interested in Nebuchadnezzar's demands and his spinning of an alternate reality. They tell him that they don't need to defend themselves and that they will stay true to their God, not Nebuchadnezzar's demands. The three resisted tyranny, speaking truth to power. In Matthew's gospel, we heard the story of John the Baptist's execution because he spoke truth to power by telling the truth about Herod's warped family tree. I did a little research to try to find out what the historians actually say about who is related to whom in this mixed up family tree, and I can't. Some people get called Herod something or other, and by some historians, and others don't, and so tracking who's Philip and who's Herod Philip and who's married to whom and who's a sister or a brother to whom, and was that before or after this person married that person or whatever. We know this much from the historians. It was a mess. And John, as an observant Jew, would have had reason to find the marriage of Herodias and Herod Agrippa to be illegal. This was not welcome news to Herod. And even less so to the woman in question, Herodias, who had her daughter ask for John's head on a platter. And all of this simply because John told the truth. He refused to bow down to Herod's lies and testify to Herod's alternate facts. He too resisted tyranny and spoke truth to power. It's not lost on me that these are not necessarily happy stories. It's not lost on me that John the Baptist was executed for telling the truth. That Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego survived, but only because God intervened. And God waits to intervene until they have been put into the fiery furnace. They had to endure that. Speaking truth to power can be a dangerous proposition. I would argue that even when it is a dangerous act, it is still a necessary act. It is a form of resistance that we are called to participate in. Part of the reason that I left the conference's annual gathering in Oakland near Coliseum early yesterday was because I felt the need to get out on the streets and to attend one of the No Kings rallies. And oh my goodness, was being there in Oakland a balm, the balm I needed. I've come to realize that growing up in Lexington, Massachusetts has deeply influenced how I see resisting the powers that be. Walking to my childhood church meant walking across the Lexington Green, the place where the first battle of the American Revolution took place. And because I gave tours of the Green as a young teenager, I had to learn the history of what happened and why. And the why of what happened has to do with standing up to tyranny. As Bill McKibben, who also gave tours of the historic Lexington Battle Green with me, has said, if America has a founding idea, that idea is no kings. Since the colonists didn't have one close at hand, they couldn't dethrone him. But the new nation took pains to ensure that a monarchy would never arise. George Washington, who could have been a king, set the tone by abdicating after 2 terms, a precedent followed by all his successors until FDR, under wartime exigency, broke it. This is the sign that I carried in Oakland. You can see the Lexington influence in it. I have a bone to pick with that sign about no king since 1776, but I saw some other signs that I thought were quite clever. There was one that I really wanted to get a picture of, but it was across the crowd, and by the time I got over to that corner to get a picture of it, they had moved on. It had this sentiment. And I was a big Smokey fan as a kid. I wanted to be a park ranger growing up when I was in 3rd grade. This one gave me an ecological giggle. And after getting permission from their parents and permissions from the boys themselves, I took this picture because the message was so basic and cut right to the bone. If you can't read the sign on the right, it says, "I'm 6, and I know this is wrong." There are reports coming out of Los Angeles that police and National Guard troops have specifically targeted journalists. I think it's important to remember that the powers that be, when they target journalists, it's because they see truth as the enemy. And that's why truth-telling is both a form of resistance and potentially dangerous. Just ask John, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Truth-telling is also a way to live out our baptismal vows. A traditional question asked at baptisms in most mainline churches is something about the Christian duty to stand against evil. This is the way the question is worded in the United Church of Christ baptismal liturgy. Do you promise by the grace of God to be Christ's disciple, to follow in the way of our Savior, to resist oppression and evil, to show love and justice, and to witness to the work and word of Jesus as best you are able? Hear that middle part again. You promise to resist oppression and evil, to show love and justice. Resistance is biblical, that's for sure. Resisting oppression and evil in the name of upholding love and justice is also a vow we take when we become Christians. I'm talking about resisting oppression and evil in whatever form it takes. I'm talking about resisting that which destroys and tears down creations and our fellow humans. That which gets in the way of our loving God and loving our neighbors as ourselves. I've found that much of the focus about the incident with Secretary Noem and Senator Padilla has been on the assault itself, and I understand that. The assault enraged me. I think it's important to understand the context. I think it's important to know that what was happening in the room right before Senator Padilla tried to ask his question. Secretary Nome was speaking, and this is what she said. We, which I take to mean the Department of Homeland Security and the National Guard troops that have been federalized, we are not going away. We are staying here to liberate this city from the socialists and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into the city. In other words, the Secretary of Homeland Security threatened to overthrow the duly elected governor and mayor, the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles, not for criminal activity, but because she doesn't like their policies. Dr. Richardson interpreted the secretary's words this way. In other words, the Trump administration is vowing to get rid of the democratically elected government of California by using military force. That threat is the definition of a coup. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Whether George Orwell said that or not, and he probably didn't, I think it is largely accurate. I think it is also our Christian duty, and I think it is a biblical method of resistance. Amen.